If you go in as a temp and you rock the boat and you let them know like, hey, I really enjoy your practice, but BT dubs, did you know that this is not okay? You're getting a phone call the next day from the agency and they're like, oh, they requested somebody else.
But if there is a team, if people would get over their fear and like all of the assistants and hygienists go to management about it, then it's a completely different conversation.
And I think what's so nice about where we're at now with everything on the internet, it makes it much easier for us to come up with solutions versus feeling like we're stuck.
Get ready for your unofficial dental hygiene podcast. These are the tales of two hygienists, one East Coast RDH and one West Coast hygienist. Listen as they tackle the profession of dental hygiene with humor and enthusiasm. Now, please join Michelle Strange and Andrew Johnston as they tell you a tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists, episode number 296. My name is Andrew.
And this is Michelle. And we are in a very sticky, hot, humid Florida.
Wonderful, awesome Florida.
Florida. Oh, it's going to be a long day for me because I am going to organize all my dental supplies in my trailer.
In a hot garage, to a hot trailer, to a hot outdoors as well.
Yeah.
It's going to be gross.
But for the love of dentistry and organization.
Yeah.
I wish I had a Zerk organization for my trailer.
Gosh. Okay.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Could I put the color-coded method?
Shout out to Zerk. Hey, we need color-coded trailer accessories, please.
And if you could just branch out into like the enclosed utility trailer industry, that'd be real great. But we're going to make this intro short because we had a great round table. It's DICAM, Dental Infection Control Awareness Month, y'all. September every year, we do this series where we talk about infection prevention because that's such a huge, important, critical aspect of our daily patient care, right?
Yep.
And so we had two guests. One, Carrie Ibbetson. The other is Jennifer Stanley, who is running the Facebook page Gadget Girl. So Gadget RDH. Gadget RDH. I think I said that. She says it in the intro or in the interview, so I'm sorry if I got that wrong. But it's Dental Infection Control Awareness Month. We're going to talk about some hot topics and some things that we've experienced as clinicians in the world of infection prevention or lack thereof in some cases. And then for the rest of the month, we're going to be talking about we're going to have other great speakers on about this topic. And it's also suicide prevention prevention awareness.
We're ready for this intro.
We really are. It's Suicide Prevention Month, which we as clinicians need to be aware of too, so that we can get ahead of that and help our patients. So we're working on an interview for that too. Anything else?
It's good.
All right. Well, enjoy this episode with Carrie Ibbetson and Jennifer Stanley.
Before we get to the interview, we want to say a big thank you to Paradise Dental Technologies, or PDT, for supporting the continuing education portion of this podcast for so many years. If you do not know already, many of our full-length episodes count for CE. You'll find the links in the show notes, or you can sign up for our newsletter by going to ataleoftwohygienists.com. When you sign up for the newsletter, we will periodically send out links to shows that have expiring CE courses attached. And none of this could be possible without the support of the amazing people over at PDT. So check out their hygiene and other instruments at pdtdental.com. That's pdtdental.com. Now, on to the interview.
Well, welcome to kind of a different style interview this time. I told y'all I wanted more roundtables in 2021, and it's September, and so I'm finally doing it, and I'm real happy about it. And I have two guests with me today, and we are going to be talking about some hot topics, some industry issues that we see around infection control and infection prevention. This is September. It's Dental Infection Control Awareness Month. I suggest that you quickly head over to osap.org if you don't know what that is and learn more about dental infection control awareness, or DICAM. And in honor of that, our hot topics, like I said, are going to be all around infection control. And I have two veterans of the industry out there doing amazing things, who have seen some crazy things, like big temping like life that they have lived. So I want to welcome Carrie Ibbetson and Jennifer Stanley. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
All right, I'm going to give you guys just a little bit to kind of tell everybody who you are if they don't already know you. Jennifer, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you doing.
Well, I am a full-time temp, and I have done that for 80% of my career. I have been a hygienist for 15 years. And before that, I worked at an oral surgeon's office. That's how I got into dentistry and decided to go back to school. These days, I am still doing temp work, but I am also running a Facebook group called Gadget Girl RDH, as well as fixing to do my first speaking gig.
Oh,
with
fun.
young people. Yeah.
Nice.
It'll be online. Yeah.
Congrats.
And it's all about temping.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll definitely have to check that out. Carrie, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Welcome back. This is not your first time.
It's not my first rodeo, but it's always fun to record with you. So Thanks for having me. I too am a hygienist. I don't practice very much clinically these days because I spend a lot of time doing consumer advocacy work. And I also speak on infection control. And I do have my certificate in infection control. So last year, there's been this push that OSAP is going for, and Noelle Kelsch, that they did a course. So I did that last year. So really exciting to be part of the change in dentistry. I've been in dentistry 20 something years now, and I started as an assistant prior to being a hygienist. So Jennifer, I got my feet wet in this industry, seeing the assisting side of it, which really helped me really put together some amazing habits, but also some really bad habits too. And I think part of the reason that I'm so passionate about infection control is I've been personally responsible for almost every breach that you can be, unknowingly. And then when you start to learn about all of the things that you really do need to know in order to break these chains of infection, just that pit that sits in your stomach that you're like, I can't go back and change any of that stuff. But moving forward, I can be part of the change. And that's what I love to do. So I speak on infection control, and I bring that in with interpersonal communication and how to have these conversations in a way that isn't turning into a negative situation. Because so often when you bring these things up, it turns into it feels like finger pointing, and it turns into a really negative situation. So how do we take this conversation and put it in a constructive way so that we can move forward and keep ourselves healthy and our patients? Because at the end of the day, that's what we got to do.
Mm-hmm. Can I be vulnerable with you guys? And I don't know, the few thousand people that listen to us right now. Two things. First off, that certificate that Carrie's talking about, I also did that. That's through OSAP and Dan B. Go check that out. I'm also going to take their credentialing or certificate test. It's a bigger test, and I'm in this guinea pig group, and it's going to be a big test. And I honestly haven't tested anything that big since hygiene school. And I have so much anxiety around it. So much anxiety. I'm like, I don't even remember how to study. If I don't make an A+, I will have a complete breakdown. I have not moved past that in my life. So I'm a little vulnerable, a little nervous about it, 100%.
I think all of us RDHs tend to be a little bit perfectionist there.
I know. News to me, Jennifer.
How dare you?
Oh my gosh. I need to make an A. Yes, absolutely. Not just an A.
Yeah. I need to ace it. Need to ace it every time. And I also am not practicing clinically right now because you guys know I moved. I went on this digital nomad journey of mine, and I'm not really sure where I want to get my license or if I'm willing to put up with all the licensing hoops to jump through. So I'm not sure when I will practice clinically. And that's a big thing for me because that was always my fallback of I have to still be doing clinic. And I almost feel ashamed as a hygienist not to be practicing clinically.
Well, can I throw out some things that, because I've known you for a little while, Michelle,
Yeah.
when you started this moving out of clinical and doing other stuff, I remember very distinctly when you were working with Tepe and you were adamant about, I need to practice in order for people to think that I'm still relevant, right?
Yeah.
So that I know how to put this in. And I think that's what a lot of us struggle with when we move from clinical into doing other stuff. You're just as relevant. Don't worry about it. You know what you're doing and you're going to do fine on your test. So you live it, breathe it.
Thank you. And these are the vulnerabilities that we deal with, right? And we're all very transparent, I think, as, givers to the dental industry, that talking about ourselves and our journeys and stuff. But we're not here to talk about me and my vulnerabilities. So let's talk about hot topics in the industry around infection control and infection prevention. I wanted to kind of have a flow of this, talking about some of the things that we have experienced as clinicians. I mean, you two being temps, I mean, I have been a temp, but not at the rate that you guys have. I've actually been very lucky to temp and then just stay in some of these practices as their like permanent temp. So I want to hear like the good, the bad, the ugly. And then I want to talk about some things that we see in our industry that we've kind of normalized, that we really probably should all start to rethink and pivot back to making it an issue. Like, I don't know, wearing medical waste all through the day and eating lunch with your lab jacket on. Like, let's just not normalize that anymore. And I really want to end it with how we can be advocates for ourselves when we know we're in an environment that is not okay. It's not following the protocols. And how can we either be the champion for change or know when to pick up and leave?
And then what do you do when you pick up and leave too, right? Because again, you're feeling like this pit of what I've done is now, it's almost like when you're a hygienist and you're like, I hate the office, but I love my patients, right? And I'm afraid of who's going to be the next one to take over. Well, I think a lot of people feel that way about infection control too.
Well, I also feel like, but you got to think about your patients. You're like, oh, you love your patients so much. So why do you want them to be, put at
in
risk?
A dirty office?
Yes, in a disgusting situation. Because you know what goes on.
I think now there's more and more people, once the Southern California thing blew up where all the kids got sick and started dying, I think people started taking it a little more seriously, because I think part of the challenge is, although we have regulations and we have bylaws and things that we should be following, standards of care, there's no checks and balances. And if you have somebody at the helm of a practice who, for whatever reason, either it's not something that they're passionate about or they just don't have a strong voice. There are so many breaches of infection control that happen all the time, day in and day out. Like, I've been in very few practices where I feel like, yes, they have a good strategy in place. I mean, talk about trying to find a standard operation procedure binder. I wouldn't even.
Yeah.
What's that?
We all laugh.
About it. In all my infection control classes, I'm like, okay, let's just be honest really quickly. Who's got an SOP binder? And
What's that?
there is never like a yes, ironclad, unless they have a consultant that makes them do that, right?
True. A lot of them have no idea.
Yeah. So that you guys have temped, because this is one thing that I talk about in all my courses. I'm like, wouldn't it be a dream if you were a temp and you walk in and in your operatory ready for you are the SOPs around how to disinfect the room, how they do instrument reprocessing, how they do anything in their practice, right? Like, here's the standardization of how we do these things. This equipment cannot have ammonia like ingredients in the disinfectant because it'll break down. So we make sure we put a cover. Like, wouldn't that just be a dream to walk into that?
And wouldn't that be a dream if they had that digitally and they're like, here is what you have at home.
And emailed it to you?
Yeah.
Before you come in, here's the email.
Stop it. This is like a dream. What a dream.
We're in La La Land right now.
Yeah, I actually send out what I call an acclimation questionnaire before I go into an office.
Ooh, Jennifer.
Asking some of that. Not maybe all of that stuff, but definitely the infection control. Like, what do you have? Do you have the N95s? Do you have a isolation gown? Do y'all wear this, that, and the other? You know, I need to know what your thing is and like what your protocol is before I get in there, but not, it's very abbreviated. It's not like super long, but I kind of need to know if I need to bring my own mask, if I need to bring my own isolation gown or my own lab coat, which I kind of do anyway, because a lot of people don't necessarily have my size on hand, but they best have my glove size on hand.
Do you charge for that if you bring the PPE?
I actually don't, but I probably should.
Oh, I don't know about y'all, but the offices I've been in have been charging a $10 PPE charge. So why not? For every patient you got to bring PPE for, why not charge?
Here's where I find it sticky about temping. And I think, Jen, with what you do, you have a lot of offices that you are a repeat temp, right? Like, because you have done that for so much.
I am, but there's a lot of them that are brand new. I have pretty much made my career out of long-term leaves. So I was typically somewhere anywhere between 6 and 12 weeks. And then I would do some one-offs and some just sporadic stuff in between. And then if I just needed a break, then I wouldn't book another. And I've pretty much, you know, if you do that, then I'm really only working like, you know, a couple of offices per year if I do a long-term leave. But there's a bunch of times where I just go into a brand new place. But then there are also a lot of regular offices that I go back in, so I already know what they've got going on.
Right. So I'm from the West Coast, from Southern California. I moved to Massachusetts for hygiene school, and I did both assisting and hygiene there. And then I came back to Southern California. So for me, I worked a lot through an agency where I would be anywhere between, if I had a home office, then I typically had, 2 or 3 days at the home office. But if I didn't have a home office, I moved 17 times before I settled in the place that I'm at now. So the great thing about temping is I can go anywhere, I can pick up, and as long as I'm licensed in that state, I can have a job next week. I never have ever once worried about where my next paycheck's coming from, because I could always have that as what I did, in the background. I always knew that was there and it was my safety net, which has been amazing. But between consulting and clinical practice for 20 blah, blah, blah years, and a lot of those years doing at least part-time temping, I've been in at least 1,000 offices by now. And so some of those I'd be in 3 different offices a week. And so there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And because I am somebody who holds myself now to higher standards, before then I didn't. And when I go back and I think of different scenarios that I've experienced or that I've been responsible for, like I get a pit in my stomach. And I talk about this with all of my continuing education courses. The reason that I'm so passionate about it is because I've made these mistakes. And then when I realized that I was at fault or that something was not correct, either intentionally or out of habit or just unknowing, right? Whether I was unconsciously incompetent or if I had just gotten lazy, which we all cut corners clinically. It just happens. Just like our brain, we move into habit loops. Yeah, we move into habit loops with our infection control. And so once you realize those things, but I think the challenge with temping is, who do you tell? And how do you tell? Because
who really does have the infection control person?
Yeah.
They don't know what the SOP is. So
right. And when you bring it up to them, there a lot of times they'll take it in a way that you then get blackballed, right? Which we've heard about that for years with people. Like if you rock the boat, if you go in as a temp and you rock the boat and you let them know like, hey, I really enjoy your practice, but BT dubs, did you know that this is not okay? You're getting a phone call the next day from the agency and they're like, oh, they requested somebody else.
Well, that's the beauty of what I do. I don't work with agencies. So I've never worked with an agency. I had one time where someone placed me, but I didn't actually sign any papers or do anything. They just basically told me where the job was. So I get to choose that, but there has been actually recently an office that I had to send them emails back and forth, and I put it in their court, and I was like, you can choose whether you want to continue the relationship because this, and this we talked about, it wasn't fixed. Ugh. I need a quality water syringe tip.
Oh, you mean one that's not rusty or metal? When you tell people, they lose their marbles when you tell them.
Oh, they don't like when you tell them they can't use a reusable ones.
They do not like when they have a drawer full of metal ones and you're like, again, BT
It's
dubs.
just not going to work.
It's not working.
Well, I'll be honest with you, this particular place, they had plastic ones.
And they were reusing them in cold sterile.
They were reusing them. Oh my God.
No, it wasn't even that. It wasn't even that. Like, y'all might actually hate me. You might want to cut this out later. But the only way I could work was with a metal one because the other one blew off.
Oh, because they didn't have their O-rings fixed. Yeah,
exactly. And they were supposed to fix the O-rings. They didn't. I came back in. I did work. And then they wanted me to come back another time. And I'm like, okay, it was supposed to be fixed. It was not fixed. If you do not have this many of at least the metal ones for me to use with every patient, not just give me one or two for the whole day, then no, it's not going to happen. And if you want to blackball me. That's fine because I don't want to work in a practice that's like that.
Well, as somebody who worked in 2008, 2009, 2010, when hygiene positions were few and far between, to somebody who's witnessing now where I could walk out and get 10 offers easily and pit them all against each other and really win in this game. The idea that our little bubble, good and bad side of it, if you are somebody who is out there challenging anything, they will talk about you. And even in the days of desperation that we're in right now, trying to find clinicians, if I am the squeaky wheel all the time, am I going to get a job? Can I still find a job? Would I have to go out of my area and drive farther or get a license in another state? I mean, that is definitely the fear, right? Like when we are talking about being a whistleblower or challenging the lack of safety practices in an office. But this is what we'll talk about at the end of like, how do we become an advocate? How do we actually approach this in a way that is not burning bridges, I guess, but you're still taking up for yourself and for your patients. I'm curious what you guys have, if you had to give a good, bad, ugly situation, because I think I've worked in some interesting ones, but not your typical good, bad, ugly, I think. So I'm interested to hear if you guys have some good, bad, ugly.
Oh, there's plenty.
You're like, where do I start?
Where do I begin?
So I'll tell you one of my last ones was a dentist that I had worked for as an assistant, came back as a hygienist. He had moved from one office to another, and they didn't have water lines they were still in the city water lines. And so they didn't have bottles, couldn't do anything as far as treat the water, shock the water, any of that. And I went to use the Cavitron, and a worm of biofilm
Oh my God.
came out.
Okay.
Seriously, Carrie? Oh my gosh.
Seriously. And and like, of course there's dull hand instruments, and then there's literally worms. I mean, they're not real worms, they're biofilm worms, right? And I brought it to his attention, and he's like, it's fine. You're fine. Just deal with it. And I said,
let me mix this up and you drink it and then tell me we're fine.
Like, I put it in a Dixie cup, and I was like, this is the water. There's flakes in this water. This is biofilm. Like, you can't do this. Well, none of my patients have ever been sick before. So you just do what you need to do, sweetheart. That word, sweetheart.
Oh,
And I was like, sweetheart, nothing. Like, you need to make some significant changes here. And I feel close enough to you to say that this has to change, or I'm prepared to do something about it. And I think that, we can get it to that at the end, but I think we have to be prepared to do something, even if that means if you're in an office and then you offer to spearhead, like, what are the solutions, right? And I think what's so nice about where we're at now with everything on the internet, it makes it much easier for us to come up with solutions versus feeling like we're stuck.
well, like you said, Michelle, like earlier in my career, yes, I was the little mouse that didn't say anything because I needed that job and it was flooded. I started temping because the market was flooded and I really couldn't get a job. And so I did that for at least 2.5 years, more out of necessity. And then I enjoyed it. But then as you get older, as you start doing all these different classes after I really didn't get heavy into conferences until 2016. And when I look back before 2016 at what I did, what I did not do, it's like horrifying. Like I had used a Cavicide wipe with no gloves on. I mean, it was like, whatever, I don't want to put my gloves on.
Haven't we all? It's a terrible thing to do.
Right. And I think that's the beauty of, again, where we're at and the opportunity to become involved, because I'm very much like you, Jennifer, with that. Whereas it wasn't until I really started plugging in and going to big conferences that I went, there's a problem, because it's so easy to be in our own little bubble. And when you're done with clinic, like, you've got life, right? And like many people, you just get used to, okay, I'm going to take the CEs that I have to take, not the CEs that I want to take.
That's what I did for years. I basically phoned it in, I just took all these free CEs, whatever, in my little comfort zone. And then, you realize once you start actually taking classes that you really need to be taking and you delve deeper and you decide to take your head out of the sand, it's not easy, because you can't unsee it. You can't unlearn it. Once you know it, you're like, holy crap, oh my God, like, that was gross what I used to do or what I used to not do.
And now what am I going to do about it, right?
And what am I going to do? Because, back in school, they're like, oh, yeah, flush your lines, flush your Cavitron, blah, blah, blah. I didn't do that early on. I didn't. And I'll go into practices when you're talking about, good, bad, ugly. I'll go into practices and the Cavitron tip is already on there.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, yes.
And I had done that at one time. I mean, I'm like, oh, my God. Ugh. And now most places have the bottled water where you refill the bottles and stuff. But I still don't necessarily see that people are truly testing their water.
Or they're using distilled water all the time and not testing, and have no idea that they're actually probably creating a bigger problem by only using distilled water. So my dirty little secret is how I got into all of this was I went toe to toe with Noelle Kelsch in a Facebook group telling her how wrong she was about handpiece reprocessing. And we got into like a full-blown fight online, which I won't say fight, because she's very, the way she's conducts
so
herself
diplomatic.
is way more
She's
professional.
diplomatic.
Yeah, she's way more, that's a good word, diplomatic. She's way more diplomatic than I am. And eventually, I came back and I said, you know what? Now I understand what you're saying. You're right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. How do we make this better? And that was my pivotal point for really opening my eyes to, I've been in this industry so long. I know what I'm supposed to do. I take my infection control classes, yada, 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 to holy crap, I don't know. There are a lot of things in breaking that chain of infection. And then I started going to every single one of her courses. There are years that I have been to 9 or 10 infection control courses in 1 year, not because I needed the CE, But because I had a job that kind of transitioned out of clinical work and I was able to work for Young. And so I was in the back of the room as one of their clinical reps. But the fact that I got to do it and go to it and just continue to learn, and the thought of you're going to learn everything that you need to know in one 2-hour infection control course that, oh, look, I'm going to without my team. I'm going by myself. And so the things I'm learning are going to be completely different than what the assistant's learning. That's going to be completely different from what the dentist is learning. And chances are, if nobody's into it, people are on their phone just scrolling through while they're sitting in a CE. I mean, Michelle, you know this, I know this. When you give CE on somewhat dry topics like infection control, half the room is like looking down at their phone and hanging out, and they're just there because it's required. They're not there because they want to learn. You hope that you can engage them enough to be like, hey, let's do something about this. And part of the way that I've become successful with that was taking 10 courses a year to see what's going on and what I don't know. And surprisingly enough, even after 15 years of clinical, 18 years of clinical, there was a lot that I didn't know or that I wasn't really appropriately informed about.
So true.
And so I think that's part of what we need to do is find people that we feel connected to. And that's what I love about your podcast, right? Like you and I have been friends since you started this, Michelle, and to be able to have one place where I can go back and do a search and be able to come up with multiple articles that I can then just listen to on my own and go through. It just makes such a huge difference. And you're years into this, so you've got a vast library and it has become a passion of yours, right? Like you've left yet another piece of what you were doing to really take infection control on and make something of it and make it easier and doable. So,
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's funny because infection control and prevention and just cleanliness and sanitizing, I've been a little bit of a weirdo about that. But my pivotal moment was I was on the job trained at 17. I was not by other on the job trained assistants.
I was on the job trained with oral surgery. And then I went to school for hygiene, and yeah, I was trained by somebody else too. And it was eye-opening. It was like, oh,
So my egregious, I guess, moments in the industry, not me personally, but ones that I've witnessed were in surgical offices. And that kills me. But also the best of the best that I've seen was in a surgical practice. So like, I've seen both ends of it, and mine have been around implant components. I don't understand why a decade ago we felt the need to reuse implant components because they were expensive and whatever the heck. But I mean, talk about taking implants that are pretty much manufactured in like a NASA style facility, like no oxygen is in there. They're so sterile. And then you bring them into a dental practice. And you might as well just like throw them in the garbage, I swear.
And then extract a tooth that is completely diseased and just put it right in. Like, how many conversations have we had about that? Like,
oh God, I've just seen some real egregious things. Drop a stent on the ground and throw it in some Paradex and then insert it. Like, I can't believe the things that I've witnessed. I think, and I try really hard, and Carrie's gone on me before about being very dogmatic about a lot of things. And I think I have found the gray area in a lot of the industry, but where I will not relent is in infection control. And I do believe that the standards, though some of them feel like they're not clinically applicable, or some of them feel impossible in some dental situations, I think there is a way to think about them that makes it work and not as expensive. But at the end of the day, you do or you don't. And if you don't deserve to be in this profession. And I cannot relax on that, because even if you aren't killing people, I mean, the person in Jersey died, like from the oral surgeon. You have these children that died, and it's not just, they might get a little sick, or, you might have to run them to the urgent care because now y'all have to do like a blood test to see if anybody's infectious. People have died. And even with that being so horrible, those are not the moments that I'm like super concerned with. It's the tiny everyday infection control breaches that maybe they leave and they do get a cold. They're not going to die from a cold, but that still shouldn't happen. Like nobody should go to the dental office. No one should go to a clean facility and leave with a healthcare associated infection. It just shouldn't. It just should not happen. And so I am very dogmatic in this space. And I hope I don't relent in any way.
Well, I think there was also that time too, when there was like a nosocomial infection, right? So you go into the hospital, and that was your pivotal moment. Like there was something at OSAP. I remember when that happened, and it was like a Hep B outbreak or something. And it became, somebody went into the hospital. I think maybe it was C. diff. I don't remember. But it was like a pivotal moment for you. And you were like, there's no going back. I can't not see this now.
Yeah, it comes to that same thing with you can't unsee it. You can't. I can't go back after seeing all of this stuff.
And also, when we talk about infection prevention, yes, we're talking about safe dental visits for our patients, but these things are in place for us. And we are so worthy of having these protections in place. And I'm going to be very candid and very probably maybe on the border of asshole on this, but if I have seen one, I've seen a million posts on social media around women being pregnant and worrying about x-rays. Would y'all agree? Like that's a common thing. Should I be taking x-rays? I'm worried. I don't want to do this. Nitrous even. I don't want to be around nitrous. I don't want to do the reasonable, I think, discussion to have. But then you stick your hand in that cavi wipe or the disinfectant wipe, or you don't glove up with the proper utility gloves when dealing with chemicals. And if you read any of those labels, there's one, I have a picture of it. It's a fertility issues on the label, warning. So I beg you guys to be worried about some things, even though we have safety measures in place for x-rays and radiation, even if you're pregnant or not pregnant, we have safety measures and we all really do abide by those for the most part. But then we stick our hand in the cesspool that is the ultrasonic without a damn utility glove on. It boggles my mind. And I don't mean to be like, if you're pregnant, then you shouldn't worry about radiation. And like, this is just a dumb question that we ask over and over again. But if you're going to be that worried there, be worried about it all, because we are exposed to occupational, chemical, and biological hazards every hour on the hour. And so it's our safety that matters too.
When I think of the spray wipe spray technique with Byrex from when I was younger.
Girl, yes, I knew some Byrex.
Yeah, right. Like I used to love the smell of Byrex until I started having all these problems. And I went for testing and I had like super high levels of phenol in my blood because I was, just using exam gloves. And I used to love the way, weird, I don't know, we're all weird in dentistry. I used to love the way wipes would feel on gloved hands, exam gloves, regular gloves. I would love the way that feels like when I wipe my gloves with a cavi wipe. I used to love the way that felt until I learned that, that pesticide, because that's what our infection, what we use for like our cavi wipes or our solutions for infection control, those are pesticides, right? And so those pesticides are coming into my system via my skin. Once that connected in my head and I was able to associate a lot of the neurological problems that I was thinking were just skeletal from having ergonomic issues. Oh no, it wasn't. There was a chemical component to what had happened to the 20-something years I've been in this industry and not knowing the importance of, or not paying attention. There were some things that I knew that you're just like, oh, it's fine. And you're just spraying stuff down or you're wiping and you're just not, you're in your groove, right? You're trying to get through your day.
Because like me using the cavi wipe back in the day, probably, gosh, it was, so long ago. But anyway, it was out of laziness. It was like, oh, I'm not going to glove up just because I forgot this one area.
Yeah, we've all done that, I think. I think we've all done that.
Or to like when you go to from back to front, right? And then back office is taking their germs to front office. And then front office is unknowingly wiping their stuff with clinical products. They don't know what they don't know. And so they're putting themselves at risk. So now you think about you cavi wipe without a glove on, or you cavi wipe and then you're answering the phone. Now you've got all that stuff and you're putting yourself at risk.
And I think that's a whole other issue is front office not knowing anything much about back office, because they are, especially now, they're spraying stuff, they're cavi wiping down all the countertops and they're, spraying stuff all over and cleaning their telephone off, all that stuff, and they don't realize it. And I know one place that I've worked at quite often, it was kind of made me cringe because she was always wiping stuff down with her bare hands, but she never worked in the back. It probably never clicked.
She wasn't licensed, so she never had to go to infection control. So I think that's one of the big points. And I know you want to probably save this to the end, but as an advocate for infection control, if you're in a practice, make this something that you have to do as a team, because there is so much more power to going to infection control classes together as a team and then debriefing afterwards and being like, okay, Susie, this is what you're going to be on. Frank, this is what you're doing. Michael, this is, like everyone needs to have a role in it.
And you need an infection control coordinator. You have got to have an ICC.
There's power in numbers.
Yes.
If you are the only one going to management and bringing these issues up, then they think you're just the problem child. You're just rocking the boat. But if there is a team, if people would get over their fear and like all of the assistants and hygienists go to management about it, then it's a completely different conversation,
Yeah. Well, we kind of are What? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I did want to share that one really bad.
Yeah. Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Let me tell you, the only place I've ever not finished my planned assignment. Okay. So I'm working there. I'm smelling something funky. And I am like, has anybody cleaned the suctions? They haven't. So I go through and I clean all the sections. And then didn't have enough rooms, and they had trained on the job assistants. And again, I have nothing against that. I started off like that, but you have to train them. And they used my room one person used my room to take an x-ray. She took the Ren kit and she sat it up on the thing next to where the mouth sits and left it there with saliva right there. Had cleaned the room. I come in to see my patient to set my room back up, and it's sitting there. So I'm like, how clean is this room when she cleaned it? Because this is not. And as a temp, I didn't want to go straight to her. I mean, rock the boat, but I did. I tried to go to the lead assistant, but then I ended up going to the other assistant and she denied it. Oh, I didn't do it. It was crazy. Same office. I see another patient. The doctor comes in. He puts his gloves on. And you know how some countertops has got that little press board stuff up underneath them? The cheap ones. He put his gloves on. He put his hands up underneath and touched all that. And then he went to look in the patient's mouth and he picked up with the same gloves an Explorer. And he went into the patient's mouth and he explored. And then he had the patient look at the computer screen to the x-ray. And you can tell when somebody touches the computer screen.
Oh, no.
He touched it with the Explorer.
Oh, God.
And then he went back in the patient's mouth. He had came in while I was still working, and I still had my mask on. I was sitting on my saddle chair. I'm that girl that brings my own saddle chair with me.
Mm-hmm.
And if he could have seen me under that mask, I swear I was about to die. And I finished up. And at the end of that day is when I had to have that conversation. So here we are at the end of this episode. And here's the conversation part. I finished my day out. I asked the office manager to come in. And I talked to her very calmly and explained to her the situation and what my concerns were. And that I am not one to burn bridges. But I can't, in good conscience, work there. And I'll be glad to fill in another day so they can find another temp. But I cannot finish out the other 2 weeks. It's just not going to happen. And whenever they do, they were in transition. It was actually getting bought out, and they were planning to build another office. So I said, once you do build an office, you have enough rooms and all that, I'll be more than happy to come back in and help you out. But I don't want to burn bridges, but I do feel like this is so important, and I have to say something, even if you blackball me.
It's those little things, right? Like nothing was so bad. Like they didn't use dirty instruments on somebody, but it's just like these little tiny moments that are breaches throughout the day that can become bigger problems for that one patient. So we have to really think about all those moments. And I'm glad that you told that story on the end, because I do want to talk in the last 5 minutes that we have here, being advocates for yourself. And when you know something is going wrong, and the reason that I was like, we really should talk about this, because this article just came out in Dental Economics called Graphic OSHA Violations. Don't let this happen to you. It came out August 23rd. And it was talking about the instance in Texas where a hygienist and assistant brought up some safety concerns during the pandemic, when we were kind of all going back, and they wanted to know what safety measures were going to be in place. And the hygienist was not brought back, and the assistant eventually did not come back. And they kind of were whistleblowers, and the Department of Labor takes that serious. They take that serious. So just a quick little recap of this. And then I want to hear if you guys have any suggestions on how to be your own advocate when you know that you are not safe in your practice, or your patients are not safe. So this says the U.S. Department of Labor issued a press release on July 15th discussing its legal action against 2 North Texas dentists and their dental practice. An assistant and hygienist were allegedly not reinstated to employment by the dentist after a mandated clinic closure brought about when the 2 employees voiced their concerns about potential inadequacies with COVID-19 safety measures in the office. The DOL release stated, while furloughed, the 2 employees asked what safety measures would be in place when patients and employees returned. After receiving a call to return to work, the employers did not reinstate the hygienist after the person cited guidance from the CDC and from OSHA. The dental assistant was contacted for rehiring, but the employer rescinded the offer after the assistant inquired about what safety measures would be in place for everyone's protection. The action by the DOL is more focused on protections of whistleblowers than any specific alleged workplace safety violation. Dallas OSHA Regional Administrator Eric Harbin stated, this dental office violated employees' rights by terminating them for reporting concerns about working conditions. Workers should not fear losing their jobs because they raise safety concerns within the workplace. The Labor Department will continue to vigorously enforce these protections. And Dallas Regional Solicitor said, employees have the right to raise valid health and safety concerns, especially those related to coronavirus, and are protected by law against retaliation by employers. So I say, take it up with your doctor, bring it to the office manager. If you're seeing issues, go get the information to back it. Come to me, come to Carrie, come to any of us that are infection control nerds. We would gladly help you find the resources that you need. Talk with your docs first, talk with your office managers first. But if there is no changes, if nobody is making a difference, if they are gaslighting you, or if you are retaliated against, then it's time to show up.
Well, it gives you an extra level of protection right there, right? Because for so long, it was like, where do I go? So you got OSHA. You can call and make a complaint with OSHA. You can call and make a complaint with the board. But again, how many offices do we know that have had issues that have been audited? It's very few and far between that offices get audited. So how awesome. I mean, again, I think you have to look at every landscape and say, okay, what opportunity do we have here? And I think with the pandemic and the changes that have been forced upon us, this gives us a really nice opportunity to say these things need to be in place. And if not, know your local legislation, right? It's your ethical duty with your license that if there are these breaches that you're bringing to your employer and they're not listening to you, or they're retaliating against you, or they're refusing to take this serious, you have the opportunity to make some changes. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people in the industry, especially auxiliary staff and front office staff, they don't necessarily want to rock the boat. Like, they don't want to get overly involved. We understand that the way that we look at our industry, we are just a breed of people that want to take it seriously. But just like any profession, just because you're in a profession doesn't make you excited about it. It doesn't make you passionate about it. So you have to look at what are your legal obligations, and then what is the moral thing? And what would it be if your kid, your grandma, your mom, or yourself were in that chair? Would you do the same thing to what this patient is unknowingly undergoing? And I think that's another really good point, is get on your local social media channels and start advocating for questions that the patient should be asking when they're coming in. What does a clean office look like? What are the things that they should have in place? Because unfortunately, nothing in dentistry moves until it's made to move, either by consumers or legislature. It's not a very open profession to being at the forefront of things.
Well, I feel like this is the time, not only pandemic wise, but since there is a shortage of people now, a lot of people are a lot more confident because there's more opportunity. So they will take themselves out of a situation that they feel is uncomfortable, it's unsafe for them, it's unsafe for the patient. And they don't feel so stuck, and they will be a lot more apt to have that difficult conversation with their employer and not just sit back and be scared to rock the boat like they used to be.
Yeah.
Because now they are protecting not just their job, but they're protecting their family. Because if they get sick from all of that, it's bringing it home to their kids and their husband and, all of their family. And then you do, like we were talking about, how when you're working and you get very close to some of these patients, and do you want that patient to be in a practice that reusing and using cold sterile, the nasty little brush to clean the denture? And I'm like, just think about if your parents, like if your mom is coming in and she has a partial, and that this office uses the same brush and puts it in the cold sterile after it's done.
How is that? Is that not okay? Oh. Oh, you mean there's like a time factor?
I think we just, like half dental offices just went, what?
Huh?
Yeah, you would not believe the number of offices I've been in where you see that lovely brush sitting there.
That has been in the same solution for like 4 years, and it just gets changed with cold sterile? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and not even that. At least back whenever cold sterile was truly relevant, you had a certain length of time, right?
Yeah, but most people don't realize that the time resets every time you put something in it.
Exactly.
I know, which I don't even understand how you don't know that, but there is not enough time left in this podcast to go into cold sterile because there's so many issues.
Can we just say
around
this right now? Cold sterile should not be used. If you are using cold sterile in your practice, it means that the things that you're using are not infection control regulated, and they're either single-use items, which it's very easy to see. If you got that number 2 with a little line through it, that means it's not used again. So let's go back to the instructions for use. Like, know what our instructions for use are with the tools and products that we're using, and just know that we shouldn't be using cold sterile. It is creating lung issues for so many dental providers. It's not even funny.
And I'm the weird person that actually enjoyed the smell of it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I gotta say, but I also, somebody would start pouring a new batch and I'd smell it and immediately start sneezing. And if that isn't your body's way of saying this is not what should be in your nasal space right now.
Michelle, can I have you give us a recap? There's so many acronyms out there and people get confused. Who should we be talking to? What resources should we be going to? There's all this. There's OSHA. You should be looking at, should we be talking to them? Should we be checking all that?
I'm just going to plug right now, Level Up Infection Control, because I know that Michelle will not. Yes.
Thank you. You can head over to my company, company with India Chance, Level Up Infection Prevention, or even her company that does a lot of OSHA HIPAA stuff with Learn to Prevent. But OSAP is the tried and true for me. I go to them because they are a culmination of all the different places, right? So they have all the resources there. But OSHA is going to be more employee based. So if you feel your rights are being violated, your safety is not at top of mind in that practice, that is an OSHA issue, and CDC is looking more at patient safety. So if you believe that this is a patient issue, you have resources with the cdc.gov/oral health, and you can print out the 2013 or even have the 2013 guidelines for the dental setting sent to you. There's a pamphlet for that. So those are the big ones. And then I'll maybe read all of my articles.
Just go on A Tale of Two Hygienists and type infection control, and you'll see a lot of stuff. Or is it michellestrange.com?
michellestrangeRDH.com.
Because there's another michellestrange.com. So
I know.
michellestrangeRDH.
Yeah.
You've got some really good articles on that one.
Thank you. Well, I am just so appreciative of your time tonight. Thank you for sharing your stories and your journey and all of your valuable thoughts on infection prevention in our industry. I appreciate you both so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Good luck with everything and everyone. And, just if you're curious about what is right and what is wrong, then that's the opportunity to take it a step further. And if something doesn't feel good in your gut, then know that's your psyche telling you that you got to dig a little bit deeper. And it's how many dental professionals are ending up with autoimmune issues like MS and things like that. And a lot of it, if you look back, a lot of it is, overexposure to these chemicals. So we don't realize that we are putting ourselves in grave danger.
Thank you. Great way to end the show. Well, another great week, another great episode. We thank you all so much for listening each week. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, whatever podcasting app you're using. Also, just a reminder, our guests are so fantastic that they love when you reach out. They love when you interact with them on social media. And you can interact with us on social media as well at Instagram or Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn. You can find us at A Tale of Two Hygienists. You can also go to our website, ataleoftwohygienists.com. And we would love for you to go there and subscribe for our newsletter. We have lots of stuff on our website. We have a learning center. You can search for any episode. This is an easy place for you to find the links for our CE courses and take the test. There's just so much more there. So head over to atale2hygienist.com. And if you want, you can also send us an email. I'm Michelle at atale2hygienist.com. And then there's Andrew, who is Andrew at atale2hygienist.com. And we just want to say thank you so much. If you love this episode and you're loving the podcast, we would love for you to subscribe and leave us a review. And, 5-star, go ahead and do it. 5-star, just hit that 5-star and then leave us a review. We really appreciate it. We love reading them. It fuels our fire. And we just appreciate you guys so much. I think that's it, Andrew. Anything else?
Nope, that's it. Have a good week, everybody.
Bye, y'all.